All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Nancy Nyland. I'm the Volunteer and Special Events Coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You have been hearing from us all month, way too much for me, but we want to now hear from you. So on your chair, or I handed you, this is a link to a very short survey. I took it myself. It's like 90 seconds, but it's a chance for you to tell us what you would like to see the library focus on for the next 3 years. So you can take it here. We've got a paper survey if you prefer up at the desk. It's also on our library website. I'd also like to thank the sponsors for Lake Oswego Reads, without whom none of this would be happening. And our largest and best sponsor, the Friends of Lake Oswego Public Library. And we have two representatives right here, Janet Buck and Vera. So thank you so much for joining us. We've got a table set up back there. If you've enjoyed any of the treats, the Friends also pay for those. So I have a little collection box if you have a little loose change or some money you'd like to donate there. And there's also the membership forms. Membership gets you the book before everybody else. This time, the Friends did very well. I only had 300 books to give away after the 875 that we purchased initially. You also get a bunch of different advanced notifications, and it's a great way to support the library and all of our events. Not only Lake Oswego Reads, but Books for Babies. All of the extra programs that we do are courtesy of the Friends. So very grateful. Less grateful, Lake Oswego Rotary, City of Lake Oswego, the Sustainability Network, and the LO Review. No, they're all wonderful and have been hugely helpful. Yes, and we're their representatives, exactly. Lastly, please silence your cell phones. It's only ham radio from here on out. So one of our presenters this evening, the main guy, is Bill DeBurr. Bill DeBurr's interest in amateur radio blossomed in 2008 after he took part in a Jeep rally with Four Wheeling Recreation Club in the Tillamook State Forest. Two drivers flipped their Jeeps and were injured, but cell phone service was non-existent, and it was a 30-minute drive back to base camp to alert authorities. All the while, DeBurr kept thinking, there's got to be a better way. He and a few others in the club earned their ham licenses. Now, when the 70 or 80 participants in the Jeep Club drive out into the forest, amateur radio has become critical to efficiently getting help and ensuring everyone's safety. Then, when a distracted motorcyclist hit DeBurr's Jeep, you live a very exciting life, and rolled into a ditch during a recent outing, DeBurr used his radio to alert authorities in Washington County. Within 25 minutes, the police, the Oregon Department of Forestry, and an ambulance had all arrived. I can personally say it saved that guy's life, DeBurr says. Since then, DeBurr has used his radio to contact people all around the world, including amateur radio operators in Zanzibar, Germany, and a sailor off the coast of New Zealand. It's a fun way to take a hobby and make it useful. It's a small world, and it's nice to be knowledgeable of what's happening around you. The Aries Group and ham radio trains you to be aware of more than your tunnel vision. Bill's call sign is WW70R. So please join me in welcoming WW70R, along with Mark Thornburg, Doug Arnold, Joan Browning, Ricky Stoll, who are joining him this evening. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Kind of warm out there outside if you saw us out there. It's kind of cool in here. Again, my name is Bill. I'm a licensed amateur radio operator. You've already heard the call sign, WW70R. With me is Doug and Mark and Joan. Oh man, this is going to be a long day. And Ricky, as sure you were just announced. One of the questions we get asked a lot, where did the word ham come from for amateur radio? And the origin of the word ham for amateur radio operators is a bit of a linguistic mystery with several competing theories ranging from the professional slang to historical failures, telltales and things like that. While some of the stories are more colorful than others, the most likely explanation is rooted in the early days of telegraphy. In the 19th century, professional wire telegraphers used the word ham as a derogatory term for operators with poor skills. A skilled operator had a good fist. He could send clean, rhythmic style of sending Morse code. An amateur or an unskilled operator was said to be ham-fisted, meaning that they sent code awkwardly, heavily making it difficult to read. So initially, radio enthusiasts who were often teenagers with spark gap radios that were trying to do it from home made a nuisance of themselves and became really upset, making the professionals and the military people extremely upset because they had unrefined signals and caused a lot of interference. Over time, the amateur community reclaimed the insult and began using ham as a badge of pride. However, specific in its origin, the translation from a bad telegrapher to a dedicated ham representative is one of the most successful, and I want to read this, examples of a community turning a slight into a title of honor. So we are all hams, and we'll use it as we can. This month, the library is highlighting the book Tilt. In that story, we see a world where the big one, the massive earthquake, hits Portland, and we can expect that's going to happen. And in an instant, nothing we take for granted ever exists. It all vanishes. The cell towers go dark. The internet disappears. The electric grid simply stops. The water faucets are dry. The traffic lights are dark. And the traffic is one big bottleneck. In Tilt, Annie has to navigate a world that has physically and socially shifted. In the world of ham radio, some of us live to train for that shift. We are the people who keep the lights on, kind of, when the wires go down. Today, I want to tell you that ham radio isn't a hobby from the 1940s. It now has a number of diverse parts, such as local family communications, sending videos and slow scan TV, satellite communications, contact with the space station, public service for parades, marathons, and community service events. We have social clubs like Coffee and Radio with technical nets to join, and emergency communications. It is now a high-tech global social network and the ultimate safety net for our community. Most people think of ham radio as walkie-talkie. Like you talk, and if the other person hears you, they can answer you back, probably within a mile, things like that. We call that UHF, VHF, very high frequency and ultra high frequency. And that's for the local use, line of sight. You can see the other person, maybe around a tree or someplace, but you can pretty well have line of sight. In Lake Oswego, we use this every day to talk to neighbors or check in on the local repeaters. Repeater is those things you see, the big antennas up on the hill and things like that, that repeat our small signals. We use a walkie-talkie to send a very small signal, and it's sent out much stronger. We have one of those repeaters here in Lake Oswego up on Cook's Butte. The amplified signal will reach a longer distance. This serves us very well for our local communication requirements. But here's the magic. Some of us call it the secret sauce. Probably not, but that's what it said. Yeah. I was told that. Have you ever wondered how we can sit in our backyard in Lake Oswego and talk to somebody in Tokyo or a research station in Antarctica? Can't say that. Without a single satellite, a repeater, or an underwater cable? I have had a conversation with a ham radio operator in Madagascar, which is, if you look at a globe, just about halfway around the world. It was kind of fun. And I was sitting in my home office with a radio such as this one right here, very similar to that, 100 watts, which is like a light bulb you've got in your kitchen, and a wire strung up in my tree. And I'm talking to Madagascar. Kind of interesting. We use high frequency HF as opposed to the ultra and the very. Now we're just high. We literally tilt, there's a word, our signals towards the sky. Whenever they hit the layer of the atmosphere called the ionosphere. The signal bounces off that layer, skips back down to Earth, 1,000 miles away, thousands of miles away, and most of the time back up to the ionosphere, and maybe it skips back down again. It can do this a couple, 3 or 4 times. If you ever watch the movie Frequency, it's still doing it. So that's, when does it stop? I can't tell you. When the sun is right, the atmosphere is open, the sunspots are doing their thing, the entire world is our playground. You might be thinking, Bill, all this sounds interesting, but is it any fun? Absolutely. If you were here earlier today, we had an HF station outside, making contact, not very many, but making contacts with other hams. It's kind of noisy here. I think it's probably the air conditioner. There's a very sustained hum the whole way across, so that's not unusual. We were issued a special event call sign. You heard our call signs before. WW7OR is mine. We asked the FCC, they give out special events, things that are happening. We said, okay, we're going to do this for Lake Oswego Library, and from the 1st of April to the 14th, we were given K7A, Kilo 7 Alpha, to be used for any conversations we made with other people. And then the library printed up some cards for us, which we'll talk about in a second, and we will send those to the people we made contacts with. We exchange those, we call those QSL cards. We get to fill in the information of time and frequency and all that stuff on those, and we mail them back to the people that we had contacts with. I have a few of my favorite ones. Some people, we used to collect a lot of them, and then postage got high and the internet came online, so a lot of this stuff is done digitally now. And a digitally print my own QSL card doesn't hack it. This is my personal one, WW7OR. The one that I really enjoy, there was a young lady who got her, there are 3 levels of licenses in ham radio: technician, general, and extra. And going up that gives you a lot more privileges. And this lady, this friend of ours, mine, Hope Leah, got her extra license at the age of 11. This is her personal card, and she lives in Florida. And her dad does lighting for TV programs and movies, and they were out in Hollywood, I'm sure. And I don't know if you follow Tim Allen, but he had My 3 Sons, and now he's on Last Man Standing with 3 daughters. That's an interesting thing. But anyway, if you watch Last Man Standing, when Tim is in his office giving the advertisement, there in the back in the corner is a ham radio station, a functioning ham radio station. And actually, the microphone he's talking in is sitting up on top of the ARRL book for ham radio. And every Thursday night, after filming is done, that station is available to any ham radio operator. And by chance, Leah and her dad were out there, or Hope, and Last Man Standing has a card for their station. And I contacted Leah, Hope. Why do I call her Leah? Because her last name is Hope was there with her dad. So I got her twice, once in Florida, once on Last Man Standing. And that's just a cool card. Japan, and most interesting, 2018, the Lake Oswego Public Library. So it's kind of fun. Some people collect them. We used to collect a lot of them. You find an old ham these days, he's got a shoebox or 2 or 3 or 4 filled with these things. Not anymore. You got to print your own to come out digitally. One of the most popular activities going on today in ham radio is called Parks on the Air. We take our gear and we go out to a state or federal park or a national trail, things like that. We set up and we do like we did out here in the front. We try to make a contact with somebody else. They may be at their home station. When we're out there broadcasting, we're called activators. They're called hunters. We also look for people that are activating in other parks, because that becomes park to park. And we do those, and we have kind of like a high-tech scavenger hunt in the outdoors. I've been on the Oregon coast, and with the antenna and the stuff I had outside, contacted France and Sweden. So I've activated 109 times from 59 unique parks in Oregon and Southwest Washington. I've made 2,488 contacts, some in Europe and some other countries. I've also sat in my home and hunted. And I've hunted 674 unique parks in the US and Canada, and 1,236 contacts, and 1 in each of the 50 states. There's a special, you can print your own certificate for working all states. Kind of interesting. And we're not just sitting around talking into microphones. Some of us enjoy some other parts of the ham radio hobby. Some use Morse code. It's the original text message. It's incredibly efficient, and it can get through when voice signals just don't cut it. The current method of teaching Morse code, much more than just memorizing the dots and dashes for each letter like it used to be. They're teaching it more like music, where you memorize groups of tones or groups of dots and dashes and things like that. So Morse code is, I think it's making a comeback. A lot of people are studying it now that gave up on it a long time ago. We also have digital methods. Mark was outside today sending emails to himself, I think, and to a couple other people. We can connect our radios to our laptops so we can send emails, photos across the country using nothing but radio waves. No internet required. It's the perfect marriage of old school physics and new school technology. In Tilt, the characters find that survival depends on the people right next to them. Ham radio is exactly that, a community that has fun making contacts around the world while being prepared to help in a disaster. Then, when all else fails, ham radio. We call it Amateur Radio Emergency Services, and we shorten that by ARES, called ARES. It's where themes of Tilt become very real. When disaster hits, the first things that fail are usually those things that we rely on most. Our phones, our electricity, the internet, the water, they all go away. I'm part of the Lake Oswego ARES group, and we are volunteers that spend our weekends practicing emergency communications for the day the big one actually happens. We don't need a cell tower. We don't need a power grid. I can run my entire station off a battery and a piece of wire thrown over a tree limb. Whether it's a house fire down the street or a regional earthquake, hams are here to provide the last mile of communication for the Red Cross and local emergency managers. We are the backup of the backup. We're very fortunate here in Lake Oswego that the city has amateur radio equipment in the 4 fire stations, the Public Works building, and the City Hall. During a disaster, ham radio operators with ARES training can be sent to those locations to relay critical information from Lake Oswego neighborhoods who have gathered it using other radios, FRS, family channel radios, or GMRS radios, because every neighborhood has a emergency group and things like that. So those guys can contact the ham radio that's close to them, and we can call downtown. We can also send information from Clackamas over to Clackamas County's Operations Center, things like decrees of problems and things like that. So one of the prime examples of this was the horrible floods in North Carolina in September of '24. Ham radio volunteers manned radio stations around the clock, helping areas cut off from all forms of communications get the help they needed. And that lasted for days as the immediate needs changed into coordinating the movement of the relief supplies. A lot of that was done from ham radios in their homes, centrally located, wherever it took. And that type of help from hams happens many times in those areas affected by a lot of natural disasters like hurricanes, floods, tornadoes. All we have to worry about is an earthquake. Well, not really. We're also vulnerable to things such as ice storms, windstorms, the fire that occurred in the Detroit Valley. Don't kid yourself, there are an awful lot of trees here. Depending on the disaster, after the initial response is over, ARES members will use their personal rigs to make what we call health and welfare connections. We'll call, you can come up and leave us, I want you to call this phone number and tell my parents I'm okay. We will get a message to somebody the other side of the Mississippi River or something like that and say, hey, call this number and tell them that Mary's okay. Because you're not going to be able to because your phones aren't working. So it would update the families outside of the area. If you've ever been curious about how this ham thing works, or if you want the peace of mind knowing you can talk to the outside world no matter what, come talk to us. We have a local club, the Lake Oswego Amateur Radio Club. We'll help you get your FCC license, help you find a mentor, which we call an Elmer. Don't ask me where that came from. And we'll help get you on the air. The airwaves are public. They belong to you. I hope to hear you on them soon. And I would love to address any questions you have. And if any of them come from the front row, I'm in trouble.
Because we're being recorded, we're going to use a microphone for any questions. Does anybody have a question?
I didn't do that well.
Do you want to describe once an event happens and communication is cut off, with the exception of neighborhoods, what you guys do, how you get into action?
The current plan, which is being modified all the time, centers on neighborhoods, and there's a grid map that centers around the 4 fire stations. And each neighborhood has assigned FRS, GMRS channels and codes. And those people are going to get together. Most of the neighborhoods have an emergency team. They're going to find out what's good, what's bad, and what's indifferent in their neighborhoods. Somebody with a GMRS license is going to get a hold of the ham guy, and the ham guy is going to call downtown with what they need, what they see, what they have. And on the other end of it too, if the city declares, let's say, a boil water thing, we'll put that back out the other way, back out to the neighborhoods and say, hey, you got to boil your water for 72 hours, things like that. So this is a working, living program of how we can take very low power neighborhood radios and turn them into contact with City Hall.
And I was pleased to find that on the city's website, if you're curious about your particular neighborhood, every single neighborhood that has an association has an emergency team, and they have someone who is a ham radio operator. So that's something worthwhile to look up, because in an emergency, that's who you're going to be counting on, the people who are your immediate neighbors, as well as having that contact. Yes, Vera.
So if the ham radio operator in your neighborhood gets a message to do whatever, how do you get that out to the neighbors? Do you go door to door, or because not everybody's going to have a radio?
That's basically up to the emergency group that you have in your I live in the Bryant neighborhood. We have 4 or 5 people that are part of the emergency group. Are they all going to be home? I don't know. You know, are they going to do a good job? But yes, depending on the severity and what's going on, it's going to be door to door. Maybe a speaker outside. You know, it could be almost anything. Like if there were enough, you know, fire trucks, police cars with their loudspeakers driving up and down the roads. But more than likely, you're not going to see them. You know. Remember, any point in time, we only have 13 firemen on duty.
Yeah.
A lot.
Throughout this month, what we're learning is you are really going to be relying on your neighbors, and they're not ready to roll it out, but it used to be called 50 Plus Advisory Board, their new name, but they're coming out with a program, but basically it's like 4 doors down, that you should know your neighbors 4 doors each way. In a, you know, first it's nice, but also in an emergency situation, you might be the person who talks to the ham radio to give information. Yes, these people at these homes are okay, or and you know, someone needs help. But it is going to be very centrally located within our neighborhoods to help one another.
And we're hoping that that team of emergency people for your neighborhood also has that list of who's who and who can we help from. And who needs it, that kind of thing. That's the neighborhood program. And we're just hanging up on top of it with the communications.
Bill, will you describe what your role in communications is with the fire department? How do you, if something happens, how do you communicate with the fire department? What happens there?
We would be communicating with a ham radio center up in City Hall. And they probably are going to write it on a piece of paper and take it down to the 911 dispatch. Wow. We don't have any real direct contact with the emergency services of the city. It's all through what we call LOCOM, Lake Oswego Communications. Okay. And realistically, it'll be a runner.
Wow. That's incredible. Right. Well, we're so grateful for the work that you do, because this is.
It's nice that they're going to be in the same building, at least now. It didn't always be that way.
Oh, that's true.
You know, so, yeah.
And another thing I learned is how busy the police department is already insanely busy. They are very, very busy. I was going to try to do a tour for the public, and they're so busy it's hard for them to have people in just touring around with another police officer. They're going to be so busy if there's an actual real emergency. So again, ham radio operators, local operators are going to be even more important.
Yeah, you're going to be on your own. There's no question. I mean, I don't know how many police officers we have on every shift. I don't know. We got 13 firemen. And let's be real, a horrible earthquake, they may not get replaced for days. So you may have 12 really tired people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to learn to take care of yourself and your neighbors.
Yeah, that is the take-home message.
That's the take-home message.
Yes. Are there any other questions before we close out? Well,
I have a couple of pass-outs if you're interested in ham radio. What is ham radio and what can you do with it, if you're willing, if you wish. And we have a three-part thing up here on the Aries group, so welcome.
It's all very approachable. I would caution you from coming up to Bill or Mark or any of these guys because you will want to join. You will want to go get the radio. It's not complicated. It seems totally fun. So, yeah, come on up and be tempted. So, again, thank you very much. And can we get a hand for Bill and his crew?
Thank you. A little bit too short, but that's the way it goes.